There you go, pass it around.
Why don't you bring that one back there since you've got.
Want someone in this seat with your cat? Pardon me? Oh, no.
That would be it.
Or Kathy, do you want one? Want to lower that one?
It's just a minute. Just take it off. We'll just take
Okay,
it off.
we're ready?
Yeah,
Very good. Hopefully I have everybody. If I'm missing somebody, tell me. I just want to introduce who the panel is today. First, we have Chris Beretta. You want to raise your hand, Chris? Chris started his career with the Dallas FC. He was an account executive. He finished in the top 10 of rookies for sales. He really continued to grow. He moved to He named the MLS Soccer Sales Executive of the Year in 2018. He became the assistant director at the Citadel, where he grew the business 216%. And he's currently the senior associate athletics director for the North Texas Athletics. Keith Bennett, he started his career in inside sales with the Eagles and promptly continued to move up the executive ladder, working with the Clippers and the Florida Panthers. He's worked minor league GM and as president of a G League team, and currently he's the GM of the University of Oregon Athletics. James Bryant is the senior manager of sales development with the Colorado. Placement of his inside sales reps, and I hope I didn't jinx him. Since he's hired since 2016, you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Jacob Hanselman has worked his way from an account executive with the Fire to the senior director of ticket sales for the Rapids. He oversees JV actually, right? Yep. So he actually leads the season, the group, the premium, the soccer side, and the inside sales. He leads sales teams to great numbers, and he develops staff to go on to strong careers, which is what we all hope we're promoting. He works hard to develop his staff to the next level. Ruby Newell-Legner. Ruby is a fan experience expert, and she has assisted 50 arenas and stadiums to enhance their fan experience. She works all over the world. She has also customized customer experiences for over 1,000 customers. She's all about satisfying that. She is president of her company, 7-Star Service. Joe Rickson has 1 year in the minor league baseball, led Joe to decide he was working with the least fun team in minor league baseball, so he quickly moved on. He spent 6 years at the Liberty University before Seton Hall. He's had a great opportunity to be part of 3 major football stadium renovations and a new baseball stadium opening. And in his current role, he is coming up with many new ticketing ideas and programs to lead Seton Hall to sales success. I have everybody, right? And then there's me. I'm Kathy Burrows. Worked for the Cleveland Indians for a while. For about 8 years, started my own company, Sold Out Seating. And my whole passion and my whole job is to develop young talent sales reps to get to that next level. Because you, sitting in front of us, are the future of sports. We got to do the best we can to prepare you for that future. We're going to talk a little bit about first-time managers and growing into that position. And I'm going to tell a story because I always tell stories. But I'm looking back to my career. I did not go into sports automatically. I started as a nurse, as a registered nurse. My last year in nursing school was leadership. And so what they did was they put me in charge of a floor. Here I am, a 20-year-old girl in charge of a floor with a head nurse taking directions from me. I'm creating the budget, I'm creating strategy. I was responsible for starting training programs. And there I am, trying to decide, what am I doing? Who's going to take orders from a 20-year-old girl? And my first day on the job, I had to prepare the assignments. And one of the patients was an extremely difficult patient. Nobody wanted him. So I'm sitting there thinking, this could make or break me for the next year. They're either going to hate me or they're going to love me. I don't know why. So I pulled a team together and I said, okay, we know Mr. So-and-so is easy to get along with. We know he's going to take a lot of energy. We know we have to be on our A game to help him. What do you think we should do? Should we go at it with consistency? One person be on that with this person for 3 days in a row? Or should we go for a fresh face every day and really helping him grow in that way? What do you think we should do? The team decided, and from that moment, they bought on anything I said. Because I hospital, worked afternoon shift. And as I was working, I found that in the evening, all they wanted to do was sit and wait. We'll just wait until a call light goes on. I'm like, okay, this will never fly. So we have to do things together. So I started putting a cart together and come on, we're gonna do back rubs, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do assessments. Little by little, they started following me and doing it. I realized at that moment, and which carried me over into sports, leadership is either a tour guide or a travel agent. Which is it you want to be? If you're telling people where. So in thinking in that way, you can, interject whenever you want. It doesn't have to go over. Tell me about your first managerial experience. Were you prepared? How did you get it? And did you learn anything from it?
Big question.
I know, I asked loaded questions, so.
Go ahead.
Go.
No, go ahead.
So my first job was about 2.5 years ago in the management, and I was fortunate in New York. So prior to my role, I was with New York with the Yankees, and I think they did a very nice job of giving some senior members of the sales staff kind of a platform to really kind of explore if management was the right thing for them. So they actually had a night sales program that we had students from sort of local colleges come in sort of 3 hours Monday through Thursday, and actually kind of allowed us to kind of be the trainer and be their managers, kind of in addition to our job as well. So I was fortunate enough to have a little bit of experience going into it. I never think that you are necessarily fully prepared, and I think everybody would say that first management role, you never for that role. And the biggest surprise is really how much you learn about yourself. And I knew that, for us especially, I was training, and I do train entry-level sales reps. It's not necessarily the sales process that surprised by. It was more like the other roles that you have as being a brother. Playing just in their personal life, and actually helping them sort of grow as grow personally as well as professionally.
I'll start off and say that I'm quite sure there's people in therapy today that had me as a boss early on because I was so bad. I had been promoted because I was really good at my job. I was given no training whatsoever. I was thrown to the wolves, and I was so excited the day I got my promotion. And then like 30 seconds in, I got the reality of, oh, now I'm going to be supervising people. Oh my God, what do I do? And it was just traumatic for me because I had not had a good role model, first of all. And then I just did trial and error. Well, I knew that didn't work for me, so let me try something else. Okay, note to self, that didn't work. So, the advice that I would have is, get some training and make sure that you're prepared. Because like you said, you can't prepare totally, but there's some parameters and some basic things that I should have had before I was thrown to the wolves. And I say that fondly, sort of. Because it was traumatic for me, and luckily I went from one facility to another facility within the same organization, and really I said, maybe you could help me. What would you recommend before you go to the next organization? And basically 28 people shouted out, your meetings suck, and I'm like, okay, start there. So, I could go on, but there's a lot of things you need to learn. And taking advice and getting a mentor is really going to make a difference for you before you get into that role.
You know, you just mentioned something really important, is that role model, and if there is a role model before you, you get promoted, and is there a role model, or are they trying to make you just like them? How did you adjust to that? How did you find yourself as you guys were going into this?
Yeah, I think it's important to find those great mentors. I think my last year as an account executive, I had Mike Ernst as our VP of sales with the Fire, and then Charlie Sloniker, who's now the VP with the Philadelphia Union, was my direct manager with the Fire, who really prepped and prepared as much in one-on-ones that we were just talking about your own individual sales, but how do you make that transition to being a manager, and helping you be involved in things like training, helping you be involved in recruiting and asking those high level questions, but then also when you take that first step, making sure that you're surrounded by somebody that's going to continue to be a mentor for you. I was very fortunate. My first opportunity as an inside sales manager, I had Brett Zalaski in Columbus, who had been an inside sales manager before, had oversaw MLS's National Sales Center, to be able to let me do things and try and fail, but also be there to tell me, hey, here's how I would have done this differently, or here's how I did this before when I had those questions. So I think having a mentor that is going to let you do things the way you want to do it, but also be there and have that experience before to say, hey, here's how we may do this a little bit differently next time.
What about you, Pete?
I mean, I've been fortunate to have some pretty good mentors along the way. I find when you get into management, one of the first things you realize is it's just as much about serving as it is about leading. And you know, when you've got a mentor who embraces that philosophy and they begin to kind of expose you to some things and help you kind of learn on the fly, pick you up and dust you off when you make mistakes, which as a first-time manager, you inevitably will. But I think a lot of good managers have most of them have had good mentors along the way, and they're looking to pay it forward as well. When you find one of those really good ones, I would encourage you to grasp on and soak it up. A couple good mentors along the way will be invaluable, and you never stop learning. Nobody in this business does it alone.
You know, Chris, you've had a lot of success in sales, obviously, and yet when you get to that next level, you have to manage your staff. You know, it's a different process, managing people instead of different of your staff.
Going from being a sales guy to manage with the teams that I've been able to manage and lead, just hiring great people around me that fit the full 360 puzzle piece, I think has been great. Getting to know my staff, building rapport on a personal level has been really good. I had it pretty crazy in Charleston where I had a staff member of mine pass away and died of cancer. So, you know, right there, my entire external unit, we were there for her family, and we, you know, that was definitely a learning experience, one that I'll never forget. But just being different, you know, we all talk about being not being transactional, building relationships. I think it transcends management for sure.
How about you, Jeff?
Where I say we need to do this, or just we need a person where the way that I would want to be treated, the way we were, why that was a good habit, why that was something we needed to do, and so that was sort of an eye-opening experience for me. Was you know, it made me realize that sometimes I expect it different from people than I expect it from myself. And that's really the first thing you have to do is you have to take an honest approach of yourself. You have to draw a T-chart and say, well, what am I good at, and sort of move from there. And thankfully, I went through that and made sure that, and once I figured that out, it was pretty easy after that.
One of the things I think is hardest, and you're all going to have a different answer on this, so this is gonna be interesting, and that is, if you move up in the same company in the ranks versus moving up from outside and being brought in, there's two different types of moving up entirely. And if you're moving up within the ranks, so how do you get those peers to respect you? You know, if you're moving up within, and if you're coming from without, and there are, some of your staff had tried for that position and didn't get it, they're gonna not like you initially because you took their job away. So how, everybody had a different story. Tell me how you managed all that. Anybody can start.
Does anyone have that story?
I mean, I had it right at North Texas. I had, internally 2 or 3 people wanted the position. I'm the only senior associate AD in college athletics that oversees ticketing. So that was kind of an eye-opener right from the get-go, but just being, again, sincere and helped to get that instant credibility, I think.
I'll grab that question and maybe run a year back with it. It starts before you move into that role, especially if it's an internal thing. You have a goal, you want to move into management. You aren't necessarily the person leading the meetings if you're an account executive who aspires to move into management, but if that's where you want to go, you have to understand that you don't necessarily have to have the C on your jersey to be the captain or to be a leader. You sort of act as if. If I'm looking at promoted people internally up to where they're managing the people who used to be their peers, and it's probably the toughest thing for a first-time manager to be in that spot. But I think management who is hiring that role is looking and looking at what those dynamics are like with the staff. Is there somebody who already has that respect? Somebody who themselves I would say if you are a sales rep or if you're in really any department and you want to move up the ranks internally and move into management, act as if, do the extra things, go the extra mile, step up and speak, share your thoughts, be heard, and kind of make that decision for the decision maker hiring that role very easy by actually being a de facto person in that role already.
I'll jump in there. I think that's brilliant. And to be a great manager, you have to think about in your role and the reputation that you're creating from the day one. As a salesperson, you're creating that relationship and that reputation every day. And what reputation do you want to start that really helps build that credibility that will allow you to move into a position like that? And then the feedback that you receive, are you good at taking it or not? And all of those elements create that opportunity for leadership. And then when you get into the leadership, you don't have to have all the answers. That's the hardest thing that I tried to have all the answers right at the very beginning. That's the therapy comment. And I truly believe that if I would have had some coaching and been able to move into it in a better way, I would have been able to say, so what do you want to see in a boss? Tell me about where you want to go in your career. It would have been, how we create our clients and we develop those relationships. We need to do the same thing as we move up in the ranks with the staff that we work with.
I'm going to take it from a slightly different perspective. If you're the person hiring within your organization, I think it's really important, especially if there's a 2 or 3 way battle among sales reps for the same position, that once you do make the decision about who you're hiring, that you're clear with the reps who didn't get the job, why they didn't get the job. I've seen work environments go very, very sour very quickly because there's a 3-way race internally for a job and one person got it and the 2 people who didn't get it, there was never really a conversation about how that person got the job, but then it starts turning into, now it's us against him, why did we get the opportunity? It turns out it's almost like this pity party. So I think if you're a hiring manager and you run into a situation like that, you have to be very clear about trying to protect the office dynamic and make sure that everybody works well and just explain those, make a learning opportunity for those reps. Look, this is what we're looking for. Doesn't mean you're not, just because you didn't get something doesn't mean we don't value you. But I think as hiring managers, we don't necessarily do the best job of circling the wagons back around to make sure that while you didn't get the opportunity that we're still picking you up in some way or another.
I'm going to throw a question that wasn't on this sheet, but this leads me to another question. Some teams, whether it's sales, marketing, whatever, some teams are very emphatic that they want to grow from within. Some teams are like, no, we want to bring from without. And all of it has an effect on culture. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think ideally it's always you want to start and have internal candidates that can move up, but it's got to be the right opportunity at the right time, and you want to make sure you're putting your people in position to succeed. I think one of the things we see all the time is not trying to rush somebody to management too soon. It never hurts to have them go through that interview process so you can give them really solid feedback about what they need to do and what we can do in terms of putting a plan in place to get them there long term. But you want to make sure you're moving them into the right opportunity at the right time. And I think the number one thing is making sure that what they're doing on a daily basis right now represents who they want to be as a manager. Certainly if they're coming internally, they need to represent the core values that they want there while they're still a rep. They have that credibility for the rest of your staff once they transition to be a manager.
As leaders, I think it's really important to have that pause. And if you consistently have to go outside the organization to get someone to come into the ranks to do that level of job, it should give you a moment where you reflect on why is that? And what isn't happening within the ranks that is making you go outside to find the person that you want in leadership. So the succession planning and the development is one of the best gifts you can give to your employees. And if that's not happening, that's usually why you have to go outside of the organization. So to have that pause and go, we don't have somebody inside, why is that? Is a really a key, a critical time for that.
Good point. You know, especially when you're a first-time manager, first time moving up into a position, a decision isn't always a popular decision, and sometimes you really have to make it. What is your advice, and how did you guys make an unpopular decision when you first started? How did you arrive at it, and how did you deliver it? How was it received?
I tell my team, like right off the bat, in any new job or any new person coming in, that you're probably not going to like half of my decisions. Like that's kind of life. But you can always trust that they'll be transparent, and I'll walk you through it. So, you know, management is not a popularity contest. I think when like, oh, it's the person in the corner office, checked in mind, a fancy title, but at the end of the day, you know, it's going to be really good to like the decisions that you have to make. I think a lot of it's just about transparency, and when it comes to actually making a decision, I would say the buy-in is important, and you get buy-in by asking for input. The example that I'd use on this one is with the Florida Panthers, we'd had a really good season, which is rare in Florida for the Panthers, but it gave us the flexibility to kind of play with our package structure, our pricing, and some of those things. But the reps were going to be the ones on the front lines selling it and spinning it. So we brought them in and just had like an hour-long session about what do you not like about this year's packages, what do you like, where do you think some areas that we can be, where are some areas we can scale back, and have that conversation, let all those opinions out into the open, and then took those, looked back over our sell-through rates and some other pieces of data, made the decisions that we felt were best, and then when we brought them back to the room, if it was a rep who gave an idea and it was something we executed on, the buy-in is instantaneous, right? But even in those places where we did something that most of the reps thought we should do differently, just the fact that they'd been heard, that they had the opportunity to put their idea out there, be heard, and then we'd walk they made. So they felt informed in every step of the process. At that point, once you roll out a decision, even if it's not one that they initially would have had or that they absolutely love, they usually will buy into it, embrace it, and carry it forward for the team.
You are one of my heroes, I have to tell you, because that's one of the things I do when I train is empower your staff. You have to have buy-in, and that's a great managerial tip for a first-time manager, for an executive leader. You can be president of a team. It's still a good reminder. You have to have buy-in. You know, people have to believe in what you're doing, and if you ask them their input, you may or may not use all their ideas, but get their buy-in, get their understanding, get where they're coming from. Those in the front lines generally have the better ideas, quite frankly. It's just tweaking them to figure out how we can use them. I mean, that might be real.
I thought you were going to say it's surviving hockey in Florida.
Were you gonna say something, Joe?
Yeah, I was gonna say, one of the toughest things that I've always struggled with, and I guess it's because we like think everybody can be an adult, but, there is a time when you have to be the bad guy. You know, that's one of the toughest things about being a boss is there are consequences for not doing the right thing and for not following instructions. And so that's one of the things that I've always tried to do. It's not necessarily easy because you'd like to think that adults can be adults, but there's times where you have to remind them if, you know, this is the policy, this is why we're doing it. Sorry if you don't like it, but these are the consequences for not following that. And it sort of makes it a little easier when that rep doesn't follow through. They should be from I see all the time, if you're reps, if you're dealing with a rep or you're managing somebody, they should never be surprised they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
Right.
You know, if you're doing that, you're not a good manager. If the rep who's working for you goes, oh, I didn't know I wasn't doing a bad job, or I didn't know that's the way I was supposed to be doing it, and then they're surprised when that consequence comes down the road for you know, their effort or the fact they're not hitting the goals they're supposed to, or they're just not doing the right thing, then some of that's on you, you know.
Chris, teams are all about numbers. What role you play in the team is all about numbers. It's a numbers game, right? It's the revenue brought in at the end of the success. With some figures that are there on how managers. But I have a question for you. How do you build a strategy to coach people instead of focusing just on the numbers?
I think just simple buy-in. You know, the numbers will come if you do things the right way. So for us, really timelines, but then empowering our director and assistant manager, you know, similar to what Heath said, I think has gone a long way in each of my stops.
I think when you make it about the people and the numbers, in most cases, take care of themselves. You know, that's a big part of it. I think when you look at management, a lot of them, because a lot of times you're so used to performing at such a high level, your expectation is that everybody else is going to be able to do what you do, and why are they not at this level? So for a manager, that's why you see like middle infielders and you know, backup catchers and things like that. They understand roles, they understand everybody has a different ceiling. And I think when you're talking about you know, when you're talking about this and you're talking about the people as opposed to the numbers, it's understanding each person is a unique individual. They're not all capable of the same exact thing. They're not all capable of what you might have been capable of. Some may be better in other areas than you were, but you need to coach the people to their individual strengths and ceilings, as opposed to a blanket message to the team. When you take care of the people, again, the numbers in most cases take care of themselves.
That leads to a very great point. How do you coach people? First-time managers, your most important job is to coach your people. I think you mentioned it before, Heath. I had someone once tell me, I said, you know, you're really good in your position. And he said, that's because I hire really good people around me that make me look really good. But I work with them to develop them to get there. He said, I don't know the answers, but I hire bright people, and I trust them to get the answers. So how do you coach them? I mean, like, you're in an inside sales role. How do you coach them?
I mean, it's amazing what people will do when you care about them on a personal level.
Good.
It is in terms of expectations, self-motivation. It is just when you have, when you surround yourself with people who want to be, quite frankly, the best version of themselves, it's cool to be around, and I'm sure we've all kind of seen that. But we put a huge premium on making sure that that our reps know that every single time that they walk into the door that they're not a number, and we truly care about their growth as a professional and personally as well. Like that is ultimately what to make sure that we take someone who maybe has very limited skill set, or maybe quite frankly it's their first job, and how to actually interact with people who aren't in their same age group, knowing that they've just spent their entire educational life hanging around with people the same age and going through the same part of their journey, So it's, you know, we've said it kind of a couple of times already, but it's just the premium on making sure that they know that you care about them first, because half the battle is just that. And then the rest of it, we talked about the buy-in and kind of, you know, continuously growing as a professional, like that just kind of happens. And then the sales is the byproduct of all of it.
Anybody else?
As a leader, I think it's really important to develop an employee's self-awareness. It's the biggest gift you could give them, is to help them understand themselves and be able to evaluate where they're doing well and not. And so the first really good coaching session that I had with my coach was that she sat down and we were going through a presentation that I had done. And she did a chart. It's like a plus and a triangle. And she said, so tell me what you felt really good about, what you're most pleased with. And then she says, and what areas would you change next time? And as soon as I said something that she agreed with, she would chime in. So it helped me to do that for myself. And then, of course, she added some things as well. But for me to have that moment before she jumped in to tell me bad, she helped me understand that it's part of my role as an employee is to make sure that I'm evaluating and
The world right now, positive. Some teams say, isn't that coddling our reps? No, positive coaching, it moves us to greater expectations. It moves us to greater self-worth. So that when, I remember a doctor once told me when I first had my kids, save no for when it's important. Don't just use it all the time, or it goes in one ear and out the other. And I remember that as a leader also. You can either, as a first-time leader, you can, you know, I have the answers, this is the way we're going to do it, or it can be, you know, let's get you better. Let's figure out, was that the best? I think it didn't really work. Let's figure out how to work it better. That comes across much differently than just, that didn't work. You need to get better at it. So what you're saying and how you say it is really, really important. How can you, let's face it, we get a little too excited and we're going to conquer the world, we're going to change things. How can you be the tour guide instead?
I think leading by example, rolling up the sleeves and showing your staff, I think that goes a long way. And lead and not just instruct. I think I've seen a lot of leaders fail when they're just instructing and not rolling up the sleeves and taking reps to face-to-face meetings and getting on the phone calls and analyzing the phone calls and the talk time and being genuine on the phone and getting to know somebody and not just want the $3,000, $10,000 sale. That's where it's all lost. We need to do it the
what I think a lot of times we reps what to do, and we just say, you know, these are our prices, go figure it out. I give them perspective on how we got to those prices, you know, how your bosses, how me and my boss got to these. So that way they sort of see how the decision was made, and they can, you know, instead of guessing about why they did it that way, or instead of complaining about they're not happy, the price point's that way. Well, no, we came to the decision because of that. We thought about it, and I try to give them a glimpse into what goes on in the meetings with my boss and the things that we're talking about and what's important to triathletic director and I did sometimes, so that they feel like they're in that process with me, versus feeling like they're sort of siloed and they're only doing what they're told and their mission is to sell. I try to give them a glimpse, because I think when they go to the next job, you know, I want them to be aware of what that 30,000 foot picture. I don't want them to get they don't necessarily have to do the selling element. I sort of want them to go to the next job and be, you know, shocked about what goes on in the room. They, you know, they should be prepared about what's going to happen when they do get that managerial step.
Jacob, what do you look for in a first-time employee? In a first-time manager, I mean?
Yeah, what do you look for?
I think the biggest thing is somebody that's passionate about growing people. Like when we're looking for somebody that's going to come in as a manager, it needs to be their people first. So somebody that has a passion for that. They have a passion for learning themselves. I think that's something is teachers are oftentimes some of the biggest learners as well. So we always want that are engaged with their reps on a weekly basis, doing one-on-ones, teaching consistently, coaching. So I think it's making sure that they have those core characteristics in terms of being a coach first and leading their teams. So I think we've always looked for people that have been a part of mentor programs in the past. They've taken roles outside of just selling. They're doing other things on their team that show us, hey,
truly coaching. I mean, you are a coach. When you get that from first promotion all the way up through your career, you are a coach the whole time. That's really important. Anybody else, what do you look for?
Perfect. Cool.
Now you know why you got the job.
Yeah.
I would say all of that. That was a great answer. I look for somebody who's a good communicator, somebody who wants to understand what's going on above, and then also wants to understand what's going on with their reps. And I mean, I think I love it when we bring in a manager, and when one of their first questions to me is, "Hey, what are you hearing from our AD, or what are you hearing from the president?" The ability to digest that, communicate it up, but also communicate it down. So somebody who, again, everything that he said, plus like just an outstanding communicator.
Managing up is actually harder than managing down, especially in a first-time role, is trying to figure out how to please your boss and your boss's boss and still do your job and keep everybody happy in your room, and you're trying to figure out how to manage up. Communication is key. Ruby, can you share, since you're a guru on communication, can you share a little bit about communication and managing up?
I think listening is so important, and when you get a flavor for how your boss makes decisions, you should make sure that you're going in with those answers already. I remember one particular go back and get spreadsheets out, and then I would go back and I would tell her, but that was her consistent message. But it took me 3 times of making suggestions for her to say, where would you find that in the budget, for me to go, I have an idea. Why don't I look first before I go in? I mean, I was a slow learner. I was very young, way a long time ago. But it's about understanding how your boss makes decisions, what's important to them, and making sure that you've done that reflection before you go in with a recommendation or a question, because you can position taking that time to assess what's going on in their brain and how are they going to sell it up to the next level. If you're sharing some of that information and the logic behind it, it's going to make a lot better impact.
I had a vice president. I used to have brilliant ideas. I'll tell you, I had brilliant ideas, or so I thought, when I was working for the So I would go up to the vice president. I would come up with my brilliant ideas, and he'd just look at me and smile. Okay, 3-5-7 rule. Okay, what's your 3 years, 5 years, 7 years down the road? What impact will this decision have? Which made me start thinking strategically. But the key with him was he let me fall down, and and it was okay to fall down. And when I did, he'd pick me up and knock me upside the head, not literally, but brush me off and say, go to it again. And that fall down and belief in me to go to it again made me stronger and made me believe I can conquer the world. What are your thoughts? Do you allow for failure? Did you fail as you were getting into these positions?
No. So just a little backstory. Like Jacob and I, we've worked together very closely for 2.5 years. We actually used to intern together. That's actually how we know each other. because we interned before we even got into the sports sales industry. We were interns in Kansas City at the National Soccer Coaches Association. So I think we have a pretty we go back first and foremost as friends, and we probably have just as many in-depth conversations over some beers than we do in the office. Which I guess. But I think it's just all about sort of just like the honesty, and it kind of I know a big theme has been going to work with people who are like-minded and people that you enjoy going to work each and every day. Your superiors like to be challenged. I think that's a really key thing is being able to go to someone like Jacob and kind of challenge him as well in his thought process, as well as in kind of battling back and forth, which is actually where most of the best ideas obviously all come from. If we're not challenging each other each and every day, then no one's getting better. So I think it's just about, regardless of, we talked about, titles don't mean anything. It's about, are you just creating that culture of just sharing best practices, regardless of who has the best idea. The best idea, whether it's from an inside sales rep or a senior director. And so that's kind of from a management level, it's like, how are you cultivating that environment? And I think that's kind of where, the really, really good teams and the teams that are known in our industry for great cultures, like that's why they're known, is because they're sharing the most practices and they have the most people coming up with great ideas.
If the staff, I'm big on letting, if the staff, if you were writing your managerial
But a lot of these kids have been told their whole life they were special, they were wonderful, and they're perfect, and you're good just the way you are. And 10 years ago when I first got into business, that wasn't as big of a thing, and now I feel like I spend a lot more time making sure that we sort of break that if you fail, it's okay, and we move on from that. But results, they matter, and so I think tough or challenging would be a good one sometimes on them, because like I said, I remember being hard on myself when I was in that role. But yeah, I think tough would be one of them.
Okay, Chris, what about you?
Accountable.
Accountable?
Yeah. I think accountability and energy, probably the two words I would describe. Gotta go into work and love what you do, so I try to give that to not just our sales staff, but our marketing staff as well. We've had some changes the last year and a half with a new athletic director, all of us on the external side, so just a new infused energy to the athletic department.
Very new sales team.
Yeah. It's been a lot, but accountability without that we have nothing. So yeah.
Excellent. JD?
The one thing that comes, you're gonna love it. It's called bring the juice. That is my tagline. Bring the juice. Basically, what it means is bring the energy each and every day. Bring that sort of fire, that spunk, that to your work every day. So, the tagline that we have in inside sales is just bring the juice, bring the energy. If you've got no juice, don't come to the office.
Yeah.
Yeah, just bring the juice.
What about you, Jake?
I would say we're always in the pursuit of excellence. Like we're always trying to find that different way that we can continue to make everybody around us better. And each and every day, that's how do we do the small things right that make the big opportunities happen, and can never being okay with where we're at, but always looking to sharpen that edge, and how do we continue to get better each and every day.
I'm really glad I didn't have to go first on this one. I guess I would say invested. That's a pretty broad word, but whether in your staff and being invested in their well-being, or being invested in their growth, being invested in a project project or a direction or an organization, just once you put your hands around it, you don't do it half-heartedly. You invest your time, your energy, and see something through. So if asking one of my teammates, I would hope the word would be invested in us as a team.
Ruby?
I have a different role because I'm a consultant and I go in and work with teams, and so I work in 23 countries and a variety of different groups, and so my life is kind of crazy. So the people that I work with that are on my team are people who are supportive of what I do and helps me do what I need. A little saying in our office is that we create the perfect world for each other. So I'll create your perfect world if you create my perfect world. And it's an equalizer in that we work for the same thing, and we respect that the other person needs that other thing to help. So but I think it's an important thing to mention that, you know, we're all in this together.
Yeah. I think a lot of teams call me the Energizer Rabbit because I'm in with a lot of energy. I have a lot of energy. I'm up till 2 or 3 in the morning. And I just bring a lot of energy, but I create a lot of energy. And the brain never stops, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Brain never stops with that better. So I think it's important that we all realize that there is no perfect manager. We all grow. We're all continually growing. No matter what level you're at, you're still continually growing. You're still continually learning how to perfect your craft, how to work best with people. And it's not an easy thing. It's a hard thing. I'd like to open it up before we close to some questions. Anybody have some questions? You know, my groups must really do well because people don't ask a lot of questions about it. Come on.
I always talk. No, Timmy Foster, I've met you all throughout this last 2 days of the conference. Doctoral student at Northeastern University as studying organizational sports leadership. And I just wanted to say thank you more than anything. I don't know if we have a direct question. You have brought so much to the conversation and to the table, and so just really excited about everything that you all were so.
For there.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Oh, now you know.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
But just, you know, thank you for bringing your juice to the table. It's very inspirational to someone like me who has some experience in the industry and then now approaching it in a different way as a researcher to the field of sports leadership. So just thank you. Seriously, I really enjoyed myself.
Thank you. Yes.
I guess one question I have for each of you, maybe you each have different experience with it, but how do you maybe resolve a conflict with yourself and maybe somebody that works in a different department, maybe just works completely entirely different than you, and you guys don't have attention, just, you know,
You're going down to nice, yeah, nice.
Or how do you go about maybe resolving conflict within your team, maybe team
That's a great
you
question.
oversee as I guess managers and leaders with
Go have a conversation. Like, don't let it foster within yourself. Like, go have a conversation with them. Like, we're all within an organization, and we all want the organization to get better. And usually, if you sit in your office or you don't have that conversation, you're just going to get more frustrated rather than you're both probably trying to get to the same end goal. But go put everything out on the table and talk through that. And at the end of the day, you're most likely going to come to a compromise that's going to make both of you feel better and going to help the organization continue to move forward.
This is a question about culture. What sort of culture does your organization have, and how you resolve issues, whether it's interdepartmental or it's within your own department? But I mean, communication, talk about not letting things fester. If it's with another department, I always like to try to make sure that we're on the same page with what our goals are, that, you know, how we each fit into this puzzle. If it's within your own team and you basically become, you know, a mediator, it's to make sure that everybody knows we're heading the same direction. This is not personal. You guys can go out and grab beers afterwards and be friends. That's fine. Like, this is a work dispute, and, you know, at the end of the day, once people take egos and put them to the side, you can resolve those issues pretty quickly usually.
The important thing to remember is usually because that person has a reason. If that person has a pretty logical, and usually it's a good reason why on their perspective, they don't want to do what you want to do, or you're not seeing eye to eye on some things. So I was just trying to get up and go to the right place. Like I get up, I make the effort, I go over there, and I just want to find out what their reasoning is. And usually it's not a terrible reason. Maybe it's something I don't know about. Maybe there's something going on behind the scenes. Maybe they have a budgetary issue where they can't invest in that. So like I said, I just think the biggest thing is just getting up out of your office and going over there.
And a lot of times you see, they're on the same page, they're just going different directions. And it's just trying to bring them back to the same direction to come up with something that makes sense. And to your point, everybody's vested in the company. You want the organization to succeed. So you are on the same page. It's just trying to figure out that common ground to get where you're going. Does anybody else have a question?
Kathy, before we end, I had some bullets that I wanted to share for everybody going into being a first-time manager. Wait one second. In my opinion, without a blueprint and game plan for success, you will fail. Respect is earned, not given, especially in sales. Revenue increases are a success. Falling back is not acceptable and can result in a parting of the ways. Gains of 5 to 20% are doable and give happiness naturally to ownership and management. Dress the part, go out and buy a classy suit. Don't look like a gypsy and act professional with your new wardrobe. It goes a long way, and I mean, you want to go up to the next level, you got to dress the part. Roll up your sleeves and lead, and don't dictate. Don't ask your staff to do something in which you haven't rolled up your sleeves and done yourself. It goes a long way. And I don't care what position you're applying for in sports, you need to sell yourself on why you and what you will do that separates yourself from the hundreds that are applying for jobs. And I don't want to emulate, so, you know, that'll go a long way. But.
As you start your careers, I can't stress this enough, get a journal. Every day before you leave or when you go home, write down what you liked and didn't like. Because someday you're going to be in that position, and you need to remember your shoes at the start. I wrote this once, and I had a president email me and said he cut that out and he put it on his mirror. And he said now every day when he goes to work, he reminds himself what it was like to be in everyone else's shoes. And he said it has turned his career around because he was at the top, and now he remembers he's bringing people along with him. So I encourage you to get a book and start jotting these things down. It's really important.
I'll throw one other thought out there as well, sort of a closing thought. When you take a look at the totem pole, right, everybody talks about, you know, you're climbing the ladder and you're moving up into management and then moving up into senior management, and you know, you've got all these people working for you, and you know, at the end of the day, I feel like the higher up in management you move, you work for more people. It's not necessarily more people working for you. You know, it's my opinion that our AD, Rob Mullins, like, he works for me. His job is to clear the obstacles and clear the road so that I can be doing. And my job is to clear the road for our managers, clear the road for our reps, so they can be more successful in what they're doing. And I feel like an organization that really says, hey, you know what, you guys are on the front lines, you know, my job is to support you, as opposed to saying, like, you guys are the front line, go and I'll tell you where. That's a healthier organization in the long term. When you kind of take that totem pole that people traditionally look at, you flip it upside down and know that if you're a manager, you're working for your team, they're not working for you.
You have definitely heard from some very strong leaders and very good leaders today. And in the past couple days, I think you've heard from some phenomenal people who have shared with you the good, the bad, the ugly. And as we were talking earlier, not just the success stories, but the non-success stories, which I think is just as important, is to hear how the times you did fail, the times that didn't work out. So hopefully you've gained a lot out of this these past 2 days if you've been here with us. We've certainly enjoyed having you. Please stay connected. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to connect with us. We'll be here for a few. Okay?
What's that?
How long long have you been in Denver?
In Oregon. I'm in Oregon.
Denver.
These
sorry,
guys in
Denver.
Denver. 2.5 years.